Hello, everybody. As everybody winds in, we are
Welcome,
trying out
welcome,
a
welcome.
new system here, a new broadcasting system. So if it looks weird, we're trying to work out the technical difficulties that may arise during this. Just checking to make sure we are live. I've seen it pop up in a few places, except our personal pages. Oh, there we go. It's up there. All right. I think we're good.
All right.
Think we're good to kick it off, Alexander. How are you feeling tonight?
Feeling good. So good to be here with everyone and with you. And so looking forward to this.
All right. So it's been about a month and a half since we've done one of these, and we have been spacing them out to, get a few episodes out, generate more interest, get more people talking about it, get more questions stirred up in people. And so we're not doing this like every other week. And so that we get more of a conversation between us and everybody out there. So before we get started, I do want to share my animal spirit tarot card or oracle
What you
card that
got
I
for
picked.
us tonight?
Okay, so today, Phoenix, the Phoenix card came up, which is associated with the root chakra. And the Phoenix card in the Animal Spirit Guidebook says freedom from suffering and past karma reincarnation. The phoenix represents the transformation of the past. It doesn't mean running from it, denying it, or burning bridges with rage. The phoenix employs an advanced technique described in yoga as the burning of impurities through practice and dedication, tapas. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. The essence of the phoenix is with us when we realize we have been suffering too long and something must change. We take a stand and decide to live consciously instead of being driven by the unconscious mind and its long list of fears and aversions. At that very moment, the spark of the phoenix is lit, and the great bird helps us burn through our baggage. We no longer run from who we are, what has happened to us, or what we have done. The stuckness and dead weight fall into the ashes, and a lightness and clarity emerge. As the stagnancy continues to smolder, the phoenix lifts our spirits up and up, and we begin to recognize ourselves again. We may catch a glimmer in our eye that wasn't there before. Look closely. It's a sign the fire of transformation is upon your wings. The phoenix and the first chakra. The ancient yogis believed that our heaviest karmas reside in the first chakra. This earthen center is called the Muladhara. Hopefully, I said that correct. Our root. The ascent of the phoenix begins here, and as the entanglement of the karmas is slowly burned, it rises from the ash toward the navel center. Again and again, makes this journey from first to third chakra, purifying our essence, freeing us from the past. And Alexander, we've done an episode where we discussed unconditional love, and you or the majority of that podcast episode was or talked about how you feel that unconscious love is from the root up. So we have to heal our root in order to ever reach that. If you want to expand on that.
Yes, yes. Separating the difference between emotional love and unconditional love, and that emotional love being connected to that fourth chakra in the middle of the chest, and the unconditional love residing more kind of in between that root chakra and the second chakra. It's 538 hertz, and that's a C sharp, and C is the note for the root chakra. So that began my search into wanting to understand that more and breaking that down into when you feel safe and secure and you don't have financial concerns, pretty much all of your judgment goes away and you're very much more open-minded about people, about situations, because there's no threat. And so I saw that direct connection to where many people are focused on the higher chakras, but it's really about clearing that root chakra out and making sure that we release what we don't feel, areas where we don't feel safe and secure. And much of this is installed in us or instilled in us, before 7 years old. And then we spend the rest of our lives dealing with it. So, and I really wanted to connect that card to today as well, being 1111 and all about the shedding what hasn't or isn't being useful anymore and focusing on those new energies and the building. And Aaron and I were part of building new energies today together. And so yes, this is great topics that we're bringing up and going to discuss. So, but yes, that's a great introduction to that so-called higher love and more emotional love.
So I just wanted to point out that the event title did mention that we were having or going to have a launch party for Alexander's new website. We practiced living in the non-preference, as it proved to be a lot of work. Probably, I mean, I know it has been a lot more than I envisioned, and I'm a web developer, so there's just a lot of content that we've had to generate and put on paper, because we've created all these podcasts, and it's just Alexander, spitting off the top of his head, getting the assist from the consciousness, the mass
That's right.
consciousness out there,
Yep.
or the divine. So we're having to really put it all on paper, and it's just it's just taking a little more time. So Alexander, you want to let the good people know when our next date is that we hope to have it done? It's a
Yes,
little
it's just
special.
within less than 2 weeks, and so we're not necessarily. I'm going to hold off on the date, but it is a special date, and we're looking very forward to it. So just be on the lookout in less than 2 weeks, and we'll be launching that. We got almost there today, and there's no worries. We just set intentions, and then we trust the divine flow, and the energy does feel better here in just a few more days.
So I did want to mention that I did make a post in the event talking about creating these watch parties, and I know a few people in the past have done it, and I know a few people out there are doing it today. So we have Michelle. There she is.
Thank you,
Says, "Hey
Michelle.
guys, I'm starting a watch party." So our idea, and I think this was Alexander's idea initially, way back when. Let's see if I can turn that off here. Well, I may not have figured out how to turn it off yet, so it may stay up there for a little bit. Uh, there we go. All right. Our idea was that if people can create a watch party of this live stream and invite their friends who may not know about the podcast but are interested in these subjects or open-minded, or just struggling generally, and may be able to use some of this information for the benefit of their lives, they know you and they don't know us. So when you create a watch party, you create a comfortable environment for people to be open-minded and listen and accepted. And so when you create a watch party, it does cut you off from us because you're in your own little thing on Facebook. But if that person who creates the watch party, or even somebody else you want to set up as the person to go between, they can have the watch party and one of our other feeds up that comments directly to us, and obviously mute one of them. But then if anybody in the group has a question, that one person designated can then just ask the question, and everybody can benefit from those questions, because we'll talk about it live on air. So we do have multiple people doing it today. We have Sarah out there who says she has a watch party going. So thank you,
Thank you,
Sarah,
Sarah.
and thank you,
Yes.
Michelle.
It's so nice to see the stream. I'm able to see the people that's coming
Oh,
on
you
and
can see the chat
commenting.
too. Oh, that's cool.
Yes, yes. So please contact us. So it's always nice to know who's plugging into us out there.
Okay, so the two topics of our recent podcasts, it's funny because we recorded the preferences one based on a question from Michelle Lyon out there who stimulated that episode. We recorded that 2 or 3 months ago, and it just just circumstances, it didn't get put out live, or put out, yeah, I guess live until recently. And then the one we just did on anxiety, it's funny how you look at the events going on in the world now, and especially with the politics, and there's a lot of anxiety being created over people having preferences. So I was kind of laughing about it today to myself because of just how ironic and just well gelled those two subjects go together, Alexander. So I did want to kick off this little chat tonight with those, and maybe you can shed some more light on how preferences or living in the non-preference goes with anxiety.
Yeah, so first off, understand that some of these phrases that I like to use in this work is intended to make you question. It's never intended to offend, but anything that we have a major resistance to is worth looking at, is worth going into. I call it self research. And when we are able to find those triggers and release those triggers or heal those triggers, we stand stronger and stronger in our power. So, as I've said on the podcast, it's not that when I say practice living in non preference, that doesn't mean that you never have a preference. What that means is you realize that every time you have a hard preference, you're going to attract the opposite strength of energy eventually. The more you project your preference, you're going to attract the opposing preference as well. And where it gets destructive is when force comes in and you want to convince somebody of something. And understand that everything that grows on this planet grows through friction. So see, it's futile to try to force your opinion on somebody else, especially it makes them want to force their opinion. And all that you're growing is dissonance. So normally, if you are able to show someone that has a strong preference, stand in your power, know that you're willing to listen to any other opinion because you're so strong in your view that it doesn't threaten it. That is the energy that's actually going to change and alter that other person to be willing to listen to your perception, because there's very few people out there that doesn't get shaken when their truth is challenged. And I sought out those that I saw that didn't flinch when their truth was challenged because they were so comfortable in their truth. And those are the people that I call the wise. They've emptied their traumas, their triggers, and they have taken the time to take all of their power back and to see that they can be very open minded when they're clear in their understanding of the subject and allow anyone to give their point of view. So, see, the whole point of conscious non preference is not that you're weak in your opinion or in your view, but that you're looking to grow that view. And that normally is only going to happen around people that are receptive. And if they're not going to be receptive, then there's no need to give friction. So that's what I'm talking about, practicing non preference. So when you are around people with opposing preferences, they normally know it and they feed off of the agitation or the aggravation of debating. And I used to be guilty of enjoying that myself, enjoying the debate that would turn into arguing. And it's just about feeding the ego. And many times it's about people working out frustrated energy that they're carrying around. So we have to be very careful that when we stand in these external preferences, to just be aware of what it's attracting in. And when you're coming from a healing perspective, especially carrying anxiety, you just don't have the buffer to do that. And this was what I finally had to accept in my healing after 5 years of suffering from nonstop chest pain. I had to accept that I carried a level of sensitivity that I couldn't stand in friction with people. So I learned to be more strong and clear in my view of things, and to give my view when people are looking for it and they're willing to search to find the connection rather than searching to tear it down. So so that's kind of like a little introduction to how, these preferences can amplify our anxiety, because the anxiety many times gets triggered when we don't approve of something that's being said or done around us. And that preference is exacerbating that anxiety. So that's a way that I found in my own experience that these two subjects were very connected.
I'm back. All right. Thanks, Alexander, for that intro. So, I did want to pose our first question of the night for the listeners out there, and we have a little graphic to show it. Question for the listeners: what is an area of your life that you are now working with non preference? And I asked that assuming people have listened to that episode and, have reconsidered some of their, or just took an inventory of their preferences and maybe question, which ones maybe they could start on working on letting go of. But even then, there could be some of you out there who have worked on them already over, your life. So feel free to leave that in the chat and we can throw those up there onto the screen.
Yes, and another big part of this, while people are thinking about that, is, the way practicing non-preference just bothers people around you, and to see that it can make other people very uncomfortable, because they haven't been introduced to that type of stillness, or that type of non-attachment to outcome, because we're not in control. That's the whole point. And to see that as soon as I recognize a preference, I want to make sure that I'm buffering that. That's the difference between intention, setting something with intention, and setting something with expectations. Expectations is always going to be connected to disappointment. They coexist. But if you don't have expectations and you just carry intentions, like we had an intention about a month ago to launch the website today, and that's okay that it didn't happen, because it's going to be even more beautiful in 10 or 11 more days. And so see, it wasn't going to do Aaron and I any good to for me to carry a preference of definitely wanting that released, like say tonight at 11:11 p.m. on 11/11/20. It's such a cool numerology. But see, if it was supposed to divinely happen in my life, it would have. And because it didn't, I'm not going to hold on to that preference. I'm going to look at the next most beautiful date, because I trust the divine more than my original plan, so to say. It was just an intention. And this is a great practice between intention and expectations.
So I did want to, offer my own, or one of my own that I've worked on, and it's no. I've talked about it before on the podcast, which it's related to sports. I used to be a very avid sport lover, and I would let a loss by my favorite team ruin the entire week. And it's so funny that I look back on it now and why I held it, so close to me, because it has nothing to do with me.
Yes.
Maybe it was because it's part of my identity, because maybe I didn't find joy in other things in life, and I was putting all of my energy into that to bring me joy. There are many different things, and over the last about 4 years, it's been a slow process. But I mean, I can now say today that I can watch a Chargers game, and if anybody knows the Chargers out there, they always tank at the end. It doesn't matter. They just broke a record for being up the most games in a row, over 16 points, and then losing in the last quarter. So to me, it's turned into entertainment. And once it's over, I laugh, turn it off, and I've actually amazed myself at how little I think about it after that.
But would you say, quick question, would you say that you enjoy it any less?
Um, it's a different type of enjoyment. It is. I don't feel myself get involved in my chest, like anxiety. I don't
Right,
I don't
anxiety,
get
yeah.
because some people, when you get into a game and you have a preference, it can create an anxiety when there's a pressure situation, and it feels so much better not having not giving it that energy and that power over me, and to
Yes.
just be able to watch it win or lose. It's just like a movie for me.
Right. And see that many times these preferences, and especially the people that have issues with those of us that are working to get rid of the preferences, uh, they they like being part of a group. And so, see, when a team wins, then they go to the bar and they drink and they celebrate. And when the team loses, they go to the bar and they all, moan and groan together. So it's that kind of collective energy. And many times those people carry larger amounts of insecurities, of many self judgments, and they just feel more comfortable in that group energy. And so they can feel very threatened by an individual that can be part and experience something like that, like a sports game, and and not take it home with them, or not take it more seriously than just the experience that they're having. So I do want everybody to be aware of that when you do start, because see, this practicing non-preference is different than not caring. We're not supporting not caring. That's not the point. It's just not being attached to the outcome, because of the first pillar of find the divine order in the chaos. That there is a divine order happening here, and I want to match the frequencies of that and set my intentions in direction with that, and trust that when my preferences doesn't work out, that I can be a true adult about it and look for what is being presented. And that's exactly what we teach our kids, or we try to, as a good parent, that they're not always going to get their way. But if you will look at it from a different perspective, you may get even more from it. So, see, once again, the things that we learn in raising our own children directly connects us to the consciousness, to that higher energy, that divine energy. And so, those of us that are parents or that have been parents, pay attention to what you tell your kids and make sure that you're doing it on your adult side with that higher vibration or that divine energy.
Yeah, and the cost of having a preference over a sports team is, yes, you get to you I guess you better pick a good one, a good team. Because, you get to share in that joy and get that energy high of the mass consciousness that shares that same preference. But when they lose, you share in that down. And like we've talked about before, kind of the sweet spot is to not, try not to have those really high highs, because it attracts those really low lows. And I mean, I know from experience that that is how I used to live.
Mm-hmm.
And even I know I talk about it a lot, but like the Aries traits of like even starting a relationship where they want to just like have everything right now, or when like we've talked about starting that shirt company that
Mm-hmm.
I've done, and trying to be perfect all up front. You're not allowing the energy to slowly build. You want it all now, and that's only like if you can't sustain it,
Yeah.
then there's going to be a fall.
Yes. Yes. And connecting that with your inner fight with the generator, which is chop wood, carry water, do stuff just very slowly and consistent, and it will build and turn into something. So that's a great example of mixing so-called Western astrology and the cards and the human design that we work with in this philosophy, to see that we do have areas of our body where we're just in turmoil or fighting. And this is where so-called consciousness comes into play, because the definition of consciousness is that higher ranking parent that is able to step in and say, hey, I recognize both of you, I love both parts of you, but now is the place for you consistency, not you excited energy that wants to build it too fast. But say that you're in a creative mode and you're doing some creative project, then yes, that's where that spontaneity, that excitement, that willingness to jump right in. So see, this is really more about is getting back to the preference, working in non-preference, because if you practice the non-preference, then you learn where to direct each energy. So it comes back to our teachings of right time, right place, right person, right duration. And timing is just of the utmost importance. So So hopefully that's helping to bring some of this, around for our listeners out there.
Okay, we got Claire has
Hello,
shared
Claire.
hers. She says, I've been working on my non preference when it comes to close friends and family who have had different responses to. I guess it doesn't, it stops. Okay, she said, different responses to the election. It's been
Mm,
interesting for me to be aware of my own judgments that still linger. And,
beautiful.
and yeah, and this is a subject that we can. I'm glad we're getting off sports because I know not everybody's a sports fan, and I want to make sure that people can connect with something that they are experiencing. And if you want to use politics as a metaphor, or if we don't want to go there, that's fine.
Yeah, any
Um,
drama anywhere, for many people, that's the way that certain people are suffering, and where other people are, doing so well. And for the masculine energy, many times it's in a sports analogy, but for the more feminine energy, it could be in a more dramatic type of analogy. So,
so
so yeah. So what was that with Claire? I want to make sure that we cover that.
yeah,
Oh, it's just a statement.
yep, that was her
And that's all big
comment on the
stuff,
question.
because this is where, especially with family, it helps to do the inner work, because if there's contention in the family, then many times you can see parts of yourself on both sides. And whatever part you have worked on healing or getting rid of is the parts that you're going to judge the most. Because once we move past something in our family lineage, we don't like being shown it. So be very, very careful with your judgment, because many times that judgment is just a sign that you are moving forward. But we need to stay humble and non judgmental and just recognize them as a mirror. And then you can actually thank them. And the way you switch that is to get into gratitude, and you thank them energetically or mentally for being your teacher, of reminding you where you've come from, reminding you not to slip back into that, reminding you. So it becomes a beautiful teacher rather than something that you just want to avoid. And that's all a perception shift. And those people that irritate us the most become our beautiful teachers and reminders. And this is how we learn to stay in love with our family and friends that have strong preferences.
So Sam has a question, so we'll get his question, and then I'm gonna jump into some anxiety questions.
Hey,
So here we
Sam.
go. So Sam says, "It sounds like if you have expectations, you are actually lacking faith. Is that accurate?"
Yeah, that's a very beautiful way to put it and to ponder. And that's why I've noticed that the people that react the least are most comfortable in their truth. And so that's why that's such a good check-in. That the more that you need to defend something, probably the less that you truly feel is truth. And this can become a very useful tool when dealing with people, when you're able to look at it from that perspective and just realize the more that they're pushing it, more than likely the more that they doubt it themselves, and they're trying to prove just the exact opposite. But when you see someone that can speak their truth and listen to any other opinion and not be swayed but not be bothered either, those are the type of people that I look to sit down and have talks with. And when you're able to get to that point, you're able to actually direct conversations and plant wisdom seeds. Because, see, remember, we need to teach people to listen, not tell and yell at them to listen. So, yes, those expectations and preferences are very, very connected. Well said, Sam.
Okay, I'm gonna get into some questions that I cooked up. Does anxiety serve us in any way? And I'd say this because we've done an episode on ego, and I remember going into that episode where I was of the mindset that ego was bad and we had to kill it, which I think
Okay.
is a pretty popular viewpoint.
Sure.
And I guess I learned something. I learned a lot that episode, and I urge people to check that one out. I think it's understanding the ego and how to something it, use it, utilize it for
Utilize it.
growth, I think. So, Alexander, I wanted to know, does anxiety have a role like that in our life, or is it kind of a response to something?
In general, I want to answer that most everything has a usefulness and has a point to where it starts to be degrading. Um, the usefulness, I like to be that investigator and find like the answer to that question, you know, or to any question, to where I can have an answer and or find a way that how can I make anxiety useful? And what I come up with was to truly activate gratitude, and that when you feel that something is not right, it gives you an opportunity to be so grateful for the things that are right. It's similar to when we get a stuffy nose. We don't really think about how beautiful it is to be able to breathe smoothly and freely until we can't. And anxiety in those that are going through it, first of all, I just give so much compassion for anybody that's going through any level of it. I know the devastation of it. And I just give everybody a big hug. But what I found as a buffer was to have a default gratitude person, place, or thing that you just keep fresh on your mind at all times. And I like to say create a gratitude practice where, every day you're going through a list of people and places and things that you're grateful for. So when an anxiety attack or some type of situation happens, that you can access that gratitude quickly. Because if you can use it with your intention and say, I'm going to turn my anxiety into something to invite in rather than to run from. And one way to start the invitation is you're reminding me to be grateful. Let me call someone right now and tell them how much I love them. Let me go enjoy something out in nature because my heart's racing and it's making me scared. So rather than going into fear, let me go into gratitude and appreciation. And these things need to be practiced daily so that we can access them, because most people, when they go through an anxiety attack, they don't think to access something like that. So that's why the repetition, daily, getting into daily practices, meditation is something else to get into daily for anybody that's going through anxiety, to get used to the rhythm of your breath, so that we can, in the episode, I think Aaron asked me tools and to suggest, and the breath, breathing, and vocal toning is what I suggested. And when you can get into that breath, you can realize that you can actually slow your heart rate down by your breath. And the longer elongated inhales and out exhales that you make, it slowly starts to slow that heart rate down. And then if you implement vocal toning, which is just elongated vowel sounds, it's even more powerful. And then you add in gratitude. So now you've got the breathing. You're paying attention to your breath. You're doing one constant tone like and you're using your intention. Those are all very, very powerful tools simultaneously. So, what I would like to ask everybody to do that's listening right now is I just want to do 5 breaths and tones together. And please join me. And I'll do one, and then we'll do 4 together. So, don't worry about matching my tone perfectly. The main point is to just focus on your breathing and just making a sound. So, I'll start. Inhale, bring in someone that you are so grateful for, and exhale. participated, take time to see if you feel any different. And those of you listening may have even heard my heartbeat coming in at the end of those breaths. And that's what you want to get into. And so please, everyone that resonated with it, utilize those three tools together: the breath, the voice, and gratitude, all simultaneously. Good vibes.
So I did mention on the episode, because we did talk about the same thing, that after that exhale and the ooh, when you take that breath in, notice how different it feels. And I don't know what causes that difference in feeling. Like, you're just kind of breathing in. I don't know if you're breathing in your sound waves that you just exhaled, or if it created some sort of coolness in your chest. But when you breathe it in, it just, I don't know, it just feels great. It's like, it's like taking a mist of rose water or something, rose
Yeah, so I
oil.
think, a big part of it is just that elongated inhale. And most of us are panting throughout our day. So, anytime we breathe in and our heart's able to beat like multiple times in one in breath and then beats multiple times on one out breath, that's very different levels of oxygen and releasing, toxins both simultaneously. That's why breath work in general is very powerful.
Okay, I did want to bring the question back up if anybody else wants to comment. We do have another one that I'm going to share. It was, what is an area of your life that you are now working with non preference? And Megan has joined in, and Finn has, I don't know if you guys can
Heard
hear
Finn.
Finn.
What up, Finn?
Uh, Megan says, I have been observing how I have been feeling when things don't happen the way I have expected them to. And this has helped me realize where I've had a preference or an expectation. If I'm having a reaction, I reassure myself that all is in divine order. Something better may be around the corner.
Well said. Very well said. Utilizing that first pillar again, and that's, we have five pillars, but for me, that first one, I very rarely have to go past the first one, but I do feel strongly that all five can bring a peace and a calmness to a situation. So that's why they're such a big part of the just philosophy.
So we have a question from Sarah's watch party. I feel like I want to call them something like a pod. I don't know why that's coming into, but maybe we can come up with a cool name to call
Right
them.
on.
So she asks, what are some tools and techniques that people with anxiety that is based around security issues, which I guess would be mostly around the root chakra, like we talked about in our card pick earlier, um, that is based around security issues, can use to find security within themselves if they don't know what that internal security feels like? So, what are some tools and techniques that people with anxiety that is based around security issues can use to find security within themselves if they
All
don't
right.
know what that internal security feels like?
We had a little glitch there. So
Oh,
I'm reading now. Can you read that one more time?
sure. Yep. What are some tools and techniques that people with anxiety that is based around security issues can use to find security within themselves if they don't know what that internal security feels like?
Mm. Well, many times that internal security um, can, you know, be practiced through gratitude practice once again. That normally a lack of security comes from um, not being, not feeling special, or not feeling a special kind of connection, even to a family or a tribe, or even to the children. So I think that's about, relating. And
And like not feeling abundance too, like that your life is abundant.
yes, but many times I don't use the term abundant a lot because it has such a financial activation. Um, so yes, a worth, self worth might be a better word, to where you realize how important and non-important kind of simultaneously that you are, that you feel important to certain people in maybe certain situations, but in the overall thing, you're not taking that to your ego that you're so important. So those self-worth issues are need to be approached, and many times that is done through changing our story, and sometimes some of us have heard that we're not good enough or that we're not going to be good enough. We've heard these stories that we keep listening to rather than when somebody does show us appreciation. So part of the practice can be making sure that you like keep a journal and you write down every time somebody gives you a compliment, because the majority of people that struggle with this are busy deflecting even when people are giving them compliments. They might say, "Oh, you're such a good mom." And inside, the mom just thinks, "No, I'm not. I just did this yesterday and I'm judged that. And so I can't even accept that, compliment." So that's the very first place I would like to suggest for people to look is make sure that you are absorbing and receiving what is being offered, because we can be busy deflecting and then we don't have anything to pull from when we start to go down in those holes. And to keep a journal of them is something that you may be able to go back and read, and you'll remember the person like saying it or writing it, and that's the energy that you want to get into, not just like that's why I'm not the biggest fan of positive affirmations, because it doesn't have like a true energy behind it. It's a self-generated energy rather than another energy that is bringing it to you. So utilizing life experiences, life relating relationships, that when you are given a compliment or when you just have like a nice evening with somebody or a nice conversation, to go right down in that journal, hey, on 11/11 I listened to this very cool podcast and it made me think of this. Like those types of things need to be reminded. We need to write reminders so when you start going down in the hole, you can pull on those. And like one of my recent ones is a beautiful gift that Claire and Aaron put together for me for my 50th birthday, and that was my gratitude box. And they had contacted clients and friends and associates to just write something that they were grateful toward me about. And so like having the ability to go to that and to read something out of that, anytime that I want is so helpful. So just know that, any of you guys thinking about gift ideas out there, it's one of the most incredible ideas that I've ever experienced, and everyone needs a box of gratitude around to remind them of the things that people do appreciate about them. And so I think that's an important part of that. I hope that's useful.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Even if like somebody who like myself, I want to journal, but I just don't.
Right.
And but an idea could be just get an old tushy box and have sticky notes, and every time you do get a compliment, you just write it on that, stick it in there.
Stick it in
That's a
there. Yes,
DIY way of doing
that's
it.
a great idea. And then, like I said, anybody that's looking for, especially with Christmas coming up, I mean, this is just a great time to make that idea explode. And someone at the heard connected to the podcast, heard of this and did it for her boss, and it went over extremely well. And so, once again, that's one of the most beautiful gifts I think you can give is showing just a box of people showing appreciation and be able to go to that.
So you kind of mentioned part of this, so I'm going to bring this question in, and it deals around people who go beyond the anxiety and it ends up into a depression. And um, I know some people out there are experiencing this, and that is really really rough. I've experienced it a little bit over my past, and my questions around that were: how does someone energetically end up in a full-fledged depression, and then how do we dig ourselves out? And I think part of what you just talked about would be one way of digging ourselves out would be finding our self-worth in other people's eyes, so
Right.
we self-realize that.
Yeah, so generate that self worth, yes. But the main staple here that I want to mention is understanding that there's 5 levels, and of course we bring these 5 levels up just about every podcast, every Q&A, and it is the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, and the spiritual, and that all 5 of those levels need nurturing in that area. Many times, depression and anxiety is directly connected to a lack of magnesium in the body. And, you know, the adrenals, the thyroid, and the heart are all connected. And once it gets down to like anxiety and panic attacks, the adrenals are normally completely drained. And most people then do have thyroid issues. And the next step is the heart. And so seeing on a physical level that you're truly feeding your body greens, if not supplementation, but making sure that you're getting like magnesium in to feel that. And I know for meat eaters out there, meat has the can provide some of that, and the B vitamins as well. And but paying attention to every level, you're not like mentally watching things that are stressful. You're not being entertained by like scary movies or action movies. Like the adrenals does not need to be activated. So it becomes on an emotional level that you don't allow yourself to get around anyone that is overly emotional, that you learn to manage your environment. And then like with the spiritual, that you make sure that you're taking time to feed your soul in whatever way that is. For mine, it was stillness and creativity combined. Like through creativity, that makes me feel alive. It makes me feel useful in this world. So when I have self-doubt, I go straight to creativity and try to remind myself of that I do have whatever limited gifts it is. I at least have the ability to put something out into this world, and that can start to help to build that in me. And so I think that's important to add, is that you're focusing on all 5 of those levels, and that you find the answer for all 5 of those levels. The physical part can be movement. That many times depression activates a lack of energy. And so you do need to get up off the couch. You do need to get out of your home and get out into the woods. So see, this breaks down to like discipline. And but if you focus on all 5 levels, and we have a wonderful planner that's going to be released with a new website that helps you to break down all 5 of these levels with any issue. So that would be the gold star of where to start, is just start dissecting your anxiety or your anxiety attacks, in those 5 levels, and see when we're able to go internal and answer these questions, it gives the mind something to do. And see, when the mind is stuck in anxiety or depression, it's normally in a loop. It's playing some negative situation or thoughts in a loop. And we need to redirect. We have the 3 R's in the philosophy of recognize it, then show it respect, and then redirect it. And that's what we're talking about here, is just learning to redirect the energy rather than trying to run from it or fight it. And many times depression is showing a buildup of energy that needs to be redirected because it's playing the same story over and over. And utilizing those 5 levels is one way to do that. And if you have any complications or problems figuring that out, of course, reach out for a private consultation, and we'll break that down very, very deeply and very precise with you.
Okay. And so this is another really good question that I'm even very interested in hearing the answer to. We did bring up empaths on the last podcast that we just released on Monday. Again, you guys can find it at, let me just pull up that graphic on our new system here. Download and stream the podcast on wise-wise.com, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and any other place where podcasts are found. So the question deals with empaths, and we talked about empaths taking on anxiety that may not be theirs. And so my
Mhm.
question is, how do we know whether it's ours or not?
Well, in an anxiety attack, from my experience, it wound up not mattering to me of whether it was mine or not. It's kind of like getting shocked by an electric fence or getting shocked by something, and you're trying to figure out, what shocked me. Um, you can spend a lot of energy trying to figure that out rather than just allowing the process. And acceptance is just one of the biggest steps in anxiety. And just anybody that's empathic, and once again, the through a consultation we break down, it's important what area you're empathic in. Some people are empathic in the intuition, some is the emotions, some is the heart center or the will or their self-worth, and then some's the direction in their life, some it's mental. So see, just knowing you're an empath may not be enough information, because if you know exactly where you're empathic, then you can direct the protection or the redirection much, much easier. One thing that I want to suggest to people is, Epsom salt baths and Himalayan pink salt baths to help cleanse the energetic field very, very often. Sage is also a very good cleanser. And then, of course, one of my favorites, the lavender oil mister, that to just keep with you and to once again allow it, once that anxiety gets activated, to realize that yes, it could be a pattern, it could be cyclic coming up from a year or years in the past. It could be you absorbing it from somebody that you've been around, or it could be, situational, even tied to your chemical makeup, like when certain nutrients drop below certain levels, it'll create some types of anxiety. So, so see that figuring it out of what it is and where it's coming from. I am definitely the investigator, but where anxiety was concerned, it was more about getting into acceptance as soon as possible, making friends with it, and allowing it to work through. And I found from my own experiences that it was that when I accepted it and just realized that it was here and it may be here for 5 minutes or it may be here for 5 hours, it stopped running into days when I started just allowing it and accepting it. And basically, allowing it and accepting it, I took it to the level where I would just stop whatever I was doing and I would allow myself to cry, but not victim cry. Just, I'm going to allow you to be here. And the crying sometimes would come like when you had a friend that treated you badly, but you love them anyway. It's kind of like that like you're coming in and you're making me feel bad, but I'm going to invite you in anyway. And that embracing it instead of pushing it away, creating the friction, is what I found to really start to dissipate it over time.
All right. So I'm going to bring in question number 2 for the listeners, and feel free to comment it in whatever chat you're in, and I will get it in our system. Do you think your anxiety is learned or created? Now, Alexander, I don't know if you want to maybe go into a
Yeah,
brief
I'll elaborate.
explanation on that.
And by learned, I mean like by your environment as you're growing up. Many people have a mother or father that carried anxiety, and so see they were almost taught it or absorbed it from from the parents. And this is very easy to see in the human design. And when a child that has the emotional center white had an environment or a parent that was extremely emotional and reactive, they are trained in that reaction, they're trained in that response. And many times that training happens before, majority of it before 7 years old, before there's an intellect to know what is actually happening. So that's what I mean by trained, that you were, and this doesn't get into blame. It just helps to answer, oh, I picked this up from my environment, from my parent, and now I can start letting this go because I just learned this. I learned this reaction. And the other one is more like you create it yourself, where you worry, you practice worry, and once again, worry can be taught to us, but you worry over things that are out of your control, like so much that you literally drain your adrenals over time, and then that pulls on the thyroid, and then eventually it creates heart palpitations and arrhythmias and things like that. So some people, can create their own so-called hell, and then others were introduced to a hell early in life and are working to get out of that. And so that was what I was kind of meaning by those two separate things, but certainly not to pass blame on anyone, because when we step into our power, we release all blame.
Would you say that the people who create it, it's almost created out of preference?
Yes, yes, you have to have preference to create, that resistance, or that draining, so to say, and it's just habitual for people that watch the news and read the news and that type of thing, that stay so involved with, like, every moment of, basically they're just repeating the stuff 24 hours a day, and you might hear it in the morning, before you go to work, and it offends you, and then you hear it again at lunchtime, and it offends you again, and you hear it again at nighttime. And so that's the problem, is it just continues to activate it, and that's the energy you're in until you drain those buffers, and then you don't have the buffers anymore, and then you're just sensitive. And see, another thing I want to mention is that emotions aren't intelligent. They don't differ from situations. So when you lose your buffer, so to say, then if you get, like, if you have preferences and you haven't practiced non-preference, then, like, see, if you go to the grocery store and they don't have something that you want to buy, that can be the same as the preference of the president or the preference of your religion, because the emotional field don't carry the intelligence to decipher between the differences of frustration. It just knows the vibration of frustration. And that's once again what brought me into accepting my sensitivity, was when I realized that anytime somebody disagreed with me, at at no matter the level of subject, it could be so mundane that my system didn't know the difference. And that's normally what I say, that people that have gone through a PTSD or traumatic scenario, it flips your polarity, and it makes you where you don't have any buffers anymore. So now the emotional intelligence isn't there, and your electrical system's just reacting at every single type of frustration. And that's why it's so challenging for most people to dissect it. And that took me 5 years to dissect that out, and then 2 years to figure out what to do about it. And my main one was frustration.
Would you say a good practice would be taking an inventory of all of the energetic poles that you're attached to in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful to, make a list of the things that, like, maybe the top three things that you just feel the most passionate about. Or, and by passionate, what I mean is the need to defend. Um, like, and just pay attention to those and ask yourself, well, why do I have this need to defend? Maybe I need to look at making sure the way that I truly see this, I've done my research, or I feel very clear in my perception of this. And that can help to start that practice of working on just seeing that every time you feel the need to lash out, take time to go study some more, take time to go pray some more about it, take time to go work with your own side of it, rather than focusing on the other side so much and the resistance of that. The other thing is just paying attention to how much you allow things to just bother you. And we don't realize it, but through our day, we do a lot of, or gosh, or small little curse words just over and over and over, rather than, like, learning to flip that energy to maybe be excited about, okay, like this didn't work out and there's something else around the corner. And I think Megan mentioned that you can turn that frustration or that exhausting breath into excitement, because that's what many kids do. And that's why they're such a great example, is the unknown is exciting to young people, but it's so scary, and we were taught to be scared of it for adults. And that's part of the universal teaching that almost every culture has, to be more childlike. And that's a very deep teaching, and very useful.
All right, we have a question from Claire. It's another long one, so I got to read it. I've seen a lot of talk from the spiritual community about how the battle between good and evil is really ramping up, with many predicting major events in our near future. How do you approach light versus dark with more of a polarity view? In other
Mm.
words, how do you think we should respond to injustices we feel passionate about, and how should light workers fight back?
Okay, I'll start this off with um, sharing the story of Gandhi, and not getting into any specifics of the person. I'm talking about an action of him being a huge part of freeing a whole nation from slavery. And they kept trying to bring him into preference, and they asked him if he was Hindu or Muslim. And his answer was, I'm either all religions or none. You choose. He would not take a side. He would not step into duality. When they approached him and they said, Gandhi, you either sign this treaty or you will go to prison. You disperse all of these people that are protesting, or you will go to prison. And he would say, well, let's go to prison. I can meditate in prison as well as at home. And so, see, he was exemplifying these things that I'm suggesting, that you choose the way that you respond. And the way that you respond to life generates a continuous energy of building. And so if you respond with disappointment, then guess what? You're going to attract more things to bring you disappointment, because I happen to feel that we are attracting lessons of what we need, not what we want. And those things are two very, very different issues. So when we are able to show that acceptance doesn't mean approval, that it means that, Jesus once again taught to judge not. And so when there is some type of killing spree, you know, to have the thought of compassion for the killer, including them in the compassion as well as the victims. And that's what I feel like many great teachers has worked to show. So when we feel strongly, we can share our view, but it doesn't have to be with force. It doesn't have to be with judgment of the other person's view. It can just be with the ability to explain. And anytime a person has the ability to explain their view, the deeper that they can explain, the stronger, more firm they are in their truth. See, this is different than proving, because if you see that the other person isn't willing to listen, then there's no need to explain. The explain is only there for those that are willing to listen. And that's why you can put out a lot of opinion fires by just asking them to continue to explain. See, rather than resisting their view, let's see how deeply they're able to explain their view. And with a countenance of true interest. I mean, I'm always truly interested when I hear a point of view that is just completely baffling, or in that I'm not in necessarily agreement with. I actually will make it entertaining to listen to their explanation. And many times you'll find that the explanation just isn't very educated or very well researched or very well practiced. Most strong opinions and people that have forceful opinions have very little to back it up the majority of the time. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so close minded. They would be more willing to explain and discuss. And so I think that is a place to start, is that you practice non-preference by practicing humility. And you practice humility by allowing those with different views to explain themselves. And normally, as they explain themselves, you can see, oh, this isn't a battle that I need to fight, because they're seeing it in a very limited light. But see, the key is they're not going to see it in another way until they want to, and they're not going to get to want to until they see an example of someone that can handle their view without aggression, and without when that view gets challenged, that it doesn't bring out that aggression. See, in the beginning, it will be seen as weak, as many people saw Gandhi as weak, but he did it year after year after year after year after year. And that weakness turns into an extreme strength over time. So, see, that's why the every way shower that I have studied, there's been so many, the Yogananda, Gandhi, Jesus, Buddha, Confucian, so many different ones, Gurdjieff, that that the red carpet wasn't rolled out for any of them. So see, it can be seen as almost like an initiation, that in order, when you practice humility, you teach humility. When you practice that humility, you teach strength in your own view. And so take the person that is bothering you with their view and just use it to strengthen your own knowing. You may learn something, and be open to even your perception shifting. That's the true student, not the one that is set in the way that they see things as concrete. Because many times, when a little more information is given, it can shed a whole different light on the subject. So, see, truth is all about the variables, and the variables are different in every situation with every person. So this is why we need to be very careful with, truth that we're trying to shove down other people's throats, and just recognize when others are trying to shove their truth down your throat, that you can be in it without receiving it, and you can teach and change the world in this manner. It's certainly not weakness. It's one of the biggest strengths, to be in front of somebody emotionally reactive and be able to hold your calm. And that's what I call being an adult in, a childish world, and why I utilize that and suggest people to look at the world and people through 8-year-old goggles. Communicate with them like you would an 8-year-old, with compassion, knowing that they're going to say some things that aren't truthful, some things that are judgmental, but they're just kids and they say the darndest things. We don't have to take them logistically. And that gets into, other teachings of, to practice not taking things so personal. And these are some of the Just Philosophy's ways to get into not taking things so personal. But great questions, Claire. Tremendous.
So is that why you would ask me questions about my crazy conspiracies and make me
Yes, yes. I mean,
make me
you're
explain
part of
them?
that. I would just say, yeah, just please continue to tell me, how you view that and how it fits in here, and that kind of thing. And and as soon as you see it start to irritate somebody, then please stop. And that was the main thing, is I never wanted to. When Aaron and I first got together, he was really involved with the conspiracy views, and I knew that path because I had done it 10 or 15 years earlier as well. And so anyway, I did utilize some phrases, to see if they would create resistance, and we would talk, and whether it was about flat Earth or whatever the subject was, I would ask him, "Oh, please, please explain that deeper. I want to hear you," and hopefully it come across as earnest. And I think that did help some processing, because see, as people explain, they can hear themselves, and they start filling in the holes. um, and that's what you're looking for, is allow the person to feel, to see their own holes rather than pointing out those holes. And so that's why just allowing somebody to explain their view can go a long way. And I love it when someone gives me the opportunity to explain my view, and in those depths.
Well said. I think it was in the so 2 episodes ago on the living in non-preference episode we did. you mentioned pointing out things is the ego, and being an example would be being conscious. Thought that was
Yes.
pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I don't remember saying that, but yes, that's that's the beauty of listening back to some of this stuff, and the spontaneity, the way that we do all of this is the fun part, because we don't script it and we do kind of fly by the seat of the pants, and that's why listening back to any of these recordings is always fun and useful.
So I did want to comment on Claire's question because it is my preference. My favorite one. My favorite of the pillars is polarity versus duality. Just because I grew up grew up Catholic in the church, and we're taught what good versus evil and that type of thing. So I've always struggled with that, and this kind of released me from that. So it always has this special place. And so one thing I would add to that is that the dark is necessary for the light to exist. Without the dark, everything's light, and then there's no contrast there. Just like if we bring the sports in, you know, in certain sports teams have certain rivals, and a lot of times their fans they have respect for their most hated rival. Like in the moment they hate them, but they
Hmm.
also, like, when that person retires, if it's a person or whatever, they give respect to them because that was necessary for that rivalry. And we can take it through like superheroes or anywhere where there is a polarity. And this is something that we have talked about in some recent podcast episodes, how it's necessary for
Yes,
both to exist. I don't know if you want to
and
comment on that.
yes, and the biggest comment to that is just a simple fact that darkness flees light. So, see, the light doesn't have to prove anything. All it has to do is stand around the darkness. And that's what I'm talking about in these situations. Allow others to give their opinion. I mean, when I was practicing this in my family, I went 8 years without giving my opinion to my family, even when requested, because I knew that my view was so different from theirs. So any question of my opinion was normally just an invitation to a debate. And like I said in the beginning, I thrived in that society. I loved it, but it kept my energy so charged up that once I went through my trauma, I couldn't do it anymore. I just literally couldn't, because it would give me excruciating pain to go into that kind of verbal battle. And so I had to unlearn or redirect the so-called enjoyment out of that, and that enjoyment turned into the question that is very poignant and was utilized in a great situation with Aaron and I, of would you rather be right or would you rather be helpful? And so I turned the energy from needing to be right to how can I be helpful in this situation? And obviously, this person seems like they need to be heard. I have people that listen to me, but lots of people don't have people that listen to them. So that's why they need to preach to someone. And so if I can play that role and be clear in my view and listen to this other person share their view, then I feel like I've been useful. I haven't agreed, but I've shown them that I can have a different view and I can still listen to you. And maybe that'll help them down the road to listen to somebody that has a different view than they do. So I think that understanding that just darkness flees light, and the light doesn't have to be forceful. It just doesn't have to run away. And that's what many people of the so-called light, are sensitive. And so once there becomes any pressure, many times the light will run away. And that's all that they don't have to do, is just be willing to stand in your power in your own light, and let whatever darkness is around you not dim your light. But as soon as it starts to dim, then my suggestion is to remove yourself from the situation. Don't wait until it almost puts your light out. Remove yourself from the situation as soon as it starts affecting you.
Okay, I have to ask this question, and I almost forgot. So Jenny left a question in, I think it was our group, that she said she couldn't make it tonight, so she wanted me to ask this. How do we um, What did I write here? Okay. How do we handle the challenge of leading, working, and managing people who carry preference when we are working with the non preference?
Well, another great question, and I think the answer to that starts off with just being the example and understanding that people need that example for a long period of time to truly get it. And so that means that the example has to be challenged for a long period of time to show that person or the people that no, there's a different way to approach this stuff. And to show them that, they will see over time that if your mood is just generally better than theirs and they're staying upset and angry all the time, and you're living in the same world around the same situations, but you're not allowing it to affect you, then see, that's the teaching through example. And even when you can point out maybe useful things on both sides or not useful things on both sides, like anytime you bring up a point about one, then bring up an equal point about the other, not to show that, hey, you don't have to choose sides here. There's a wonderful Native American proverb that says, the right wing and left wing are attached to the same bird. And so all these parties and things that people are so dedicated to, they're not pure. They all have their so-called pros and so-called cons, and we're busy like fighting against each other rather than just being able to see the pros on both sides and the cons on both sides, to be able to have that kind of discussion. And then you might have a slight preference, and your friend might have a slight preference too. But if the conversations could just be steered toward, hey, what can we see similarly? What can we discuss that is useful, rather than what can we prove to one another, and keep bringing up just negative stuff about the opposite parties, or in sports, the opposite teams, or trying to figure out in a drama of whether the person is a good guy or a bad guy that's running from the cops. And see, we're just trained to think and try to figure out that, like, what's right and what's wrong, like, so fast. And we need all the information. We need many variables that aren't revealed to truly know the answer to that. And most people are drawing their opinions on very limited information instead of having these stimulating conversations to, hey, can we just discuss on your side what you see as strengths and weaknesses, and I'll discuss on my side what I see as strengths and weaknesses, and not get into comparing, but get into conversation.
Okay, just gonna go through a few comments that were left. We got a shout out to Finn.
Mhm.
He appreciates that. We got a shout out to you, Alexander, for
Much thanks, Sarah.
your answer. And then we got Claire. Thank you both for helping the darkness flee your lights.
Mm.
Thank you. I'm going to I'm going to write that down on my sticky note, put it in my
Yes, and
tissue
see,
box for later.
it's important, those that are practicing non-preference too, to make sure that people don't misunderstand that it doesn't mean that you don't care. It just means that you don't care to cause friction to get your view across. That is not weak. That is mature in my view, and maturity is what actually brings conscious change, um, not adolescent temper tantrums. And that's what we experience a lot in our government, in our school systems, just almost every area of our culture. And so, once again, that's not a judgment, and I'm not pointing anybody out. I'm just saying that any situation that is healed is done through communication, not through aggression. And we're working towards getting away from this winner and loser mentality, to understand that we are all connected. And in order for one party to win, somebody else has to lose. And that, compassionate people can show compassion to the losers. And those were the athletes that I looked to appreciate when I was growing up, was the ones that were kind, and in their ability was so comfortable that when somebody made, like, say, a nice shot or a nice play on them, that they went over and shook their hand. That to me was so much more inspiring over somebody that just talked trash. and boosted their egos constantly. And that happens a lot in sports. And it's the same as you were saying earlier about showing respect, even in any kind of drama. Like when you have an adversary and you come face to face, the respect is typically there, that to show that respect of, you make me a better person and more faithful in my faith by challenging me. Therefore, I don't like you, but I respect you. And that's something important to understand, is that you can respect somebody or something without liking them. And respect can go a long way energetically, because we do need those opposites or those polarities to help make us stronger. And to be angry at those opposites is very unconscious and unwise and very adolescent. So, this is really just about shifting your perception as to whether you want to approach life like a conscious adult, or you want to continue being jerked around by your emotional whims, like a young child. And this philosophy and this work, is just really useful at breaking down step by step how to do or undo this conditioning that has been done to most all of us, whether it was with good intentions or not.
Okay. So we're coming to the end, but I have a few more things if they're quick. So in the episode of non-preference or preferences, I said you have to like some things, and I kind of cringe when I listen back to that because I kind of would have liked to pose it in a question and get your response to it, but that brought me to a question: is the whole like practice around preference and non-preference, is it to train us to consider the cost of all of our preferences? Because you've said that it's okay to have a preference as long as you accept the cost. So is that like what we're trying to get people to do?
Yes, yes. Like, I can say that I like Ravi Shankar's music, Indian sitar, better than, I don't know, heavy metal thrash music. I'm not judging heavy metal thrash music. I just have a slight liking to the Ravi Shankar. But the point is that if I'm at someone's house or in someone's car and they're playing heavy metal music, then I don't have to go into a rant or preaching and try to convince them to put on some Ravi Shankar music. What I can do is I can realize my preference, and then I can sit in the discomfort of it until I learn to make love with my resistance. Until I sit there in that heavy metal music and go, what can I find to appreciate in this? Rather than focusing on what I don't like, how can I find a way to appreciate this? And that is a practice that I've just done daily for over 20 years now. And that is basically the teaching of this non-preference, is that the more that you not put yourself in situations, you'll find yourself automatically in situations that you don't like. And when you practice finding gratitude or finding something that you can like in it, then all of a sudden the situations that you don't like start falling away. And when you're able to shift your perception and get out of like so-called negativity, this is the recognize, show respect, and redirect. And see, you're standing more and more in your power. You're sticking your stake in the ground of who you are, what you're about, and what you exemplify deeper and deeper and deeper, because you're not going to be controlled by opposition out there in the world. You're not going to be controlled by duality. You're going to accept it through polarity. And you're going to go, there you are. Man, I used to have way much more preference around this than I do now. Now I can sit in this conversation with this person for an hour, to where it used to be 5 minutes and they would have me so frustrated that it would ruin my week. And so that's the point of, once again, practicing non-preference, is to get you to a point to where anytime you find yourself in disalignment or dissonance, that you're able to shift it energetically, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually into a harmonious vibration. That's the power that we have. That is the true power of vibration. And that the fifth pillar, that everything is vibration. So, see, when we shift just the way that we are looking at a situation, we do not have to change our environment, the people, or the actions of them. All we have to do is shift our perception, and that's in our preferences. And I've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt in my own path that when you dissolve those preferences, the challenges of those preferences stop showing up. Because when you don't give something frictional energy, it can't grow. It has to start dissipating. That's a law of physics. That's not something I made up. That's the way that energy works. So I think that that's very important for people to truly digest and take, from this Q&A and from that episode of preferences, because this is one that challenges many people, and it's just a matter of being able to shift how you look at something, and you can practice that with people that you don't like or things that don't exemplify beauty or something good in your life, whether that is politics or religion or a sports team or whatever it is, to go to that sports team that you've just despised your whole life and find one player on that team. And then you pull for that one player all year. And every game you go to look up his stats, what he's doing. You find something of some kind of drama that's going on somewhere in the world. And rather than just being all bad about this one group or something like that, be willing to see something about like the passion. Like, for example, I got told a story in my late 20s about this gentleman that was traveling in Europe from ashram to ashram during the Vietnam War. And he was following this guru, and he really enjoyed his teachings. And when he was walking into this building, this group of fanatic Christians, someone picked up a brick and threw it and hit the Swami in the back of the head, and it started bleeding right away. And he had two bodyguards with him, and those bodyguards like lunged toward going toward that fence to where that person was. And the Swami grabbed both of them. And in that moment, he said, let's not think negatively about this person's passion. Their passion for their religion is a beautiful thing. And if their passion was on our side, then we would be praising them. And so we do not need to take this time to try to correct them or show them a different way, but let's please appreciate the passion that they have. And that if that passion was just learned to be redirected, it could be so useful and beautiful to the world. And see that type of view is he was willing to take that blow. He was willing to take that pain. He was willing to direct people that wanted to protect him for the overall good of everyone involved. And when I hear true stories like that, it just shoots chills all over my body, because that's strength to me. That is everything that the just philosophy stands for, and that is not that is not weakness in any way, shape, or form. Strength does not always need to be shown in action.
So Michelle comments, darkness flees light. Thank you both for your service to others. Super helpful tips and enlightening questions. Practicing non-preference, turning off the TV, and focusing on my intentions has changed the quality of my life.
Mm. Well
Thank you for
said. Thank you so
thank you
much,
for
Michelle, for
sharing that.
sharing. Yes, and sharing with your people.
So for all the people who have stuck around until the end, I want to like quick fire. Let's see if Alexander can quick fire some ideas of people who are struggling, whether it's anxiety, depression, just feeling stuck. What are some ways, some examples of ways they can really get the energy moving around them and, kind of step out of that? And I'll just throw some, one of these things that you do, Alexander, is rearrange your home a lot whenever
Very
you
often.
feel new energy. And I love that idea. And you can even do like new clothes. It's kind of like anything that's creative, but give us some examples on your mind.
Yes, I think that, yes, anything that you can do creative helps to break up that worry type of energy, which is connected to anxiety. And, making a practice of that. I can't tell you the strength of contacting just someone and sharing with them how they inspire you. Uh, to be able to connect to someone that does lift you up, whether they're lifting you up in that moment or not, isn't important. Is that you just express that, hey, when you do this, it does make a difference in my life, and it helps that other person to want to do whatever they do, more often. So that's a direct way to get into gratitude. And many people, when they're going through anxiety, it's connected to self-loathing, and that's why reaching out and reaching to someone that you just appreciate, anything about, and just being able to tell them about that. See, they're habitually going to want to say something nice back to you, which is a side effect of that, because that's not what you're going for. You're not looking to get a compliment. You're looking to give one and be in the vibration of appreciation, the vibration of gratitude. So that's one that I would just throw off the top of my head.
Cool. And if anybody else out there has their own practices or ideas that they want to throw down in the comments for other people to view later on, for those who are there now and those who will be watching it in the rerun, please share those with everybody and join our community. Let me throw that out. Let me go through the list of links here.
Yes.
Like us on Facebook. That's cool, even though not everybody sees our posts. But I anything I post on Facebook, I usually share into our Facebook community. So that's why it's vital for you guys. If you want to be part of our community and get our Facebook posts, join our community. It's facebook.com/group/wise podcast. And you can follow us on Instagram, where our most recent post is a glorious picture of Jocko, Alexander's cat,
Mhm.
who is what we're
Master
calling a way
teacher.
shower, yet master teacher. So Jocko is a cool cat. And of course, you can download and stream the podcast on wise-wise.com, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And I just wanted to say thank you for everybody attending, and please, share the podcast, whether it's, from our website or from YouTube, or even from Spotify. Any little thing helps. Just spread it with people who you think can really benefit from this information. And if you really want to help us out, leaving a review on iTunes and rating us there helps out a lot in our ability to get ranked. And the more higher we rank, the more people see us, and the more people try us, and the more people like us, and then we only get further support built out, and like a ripple. So
Yes, and testimonials too. Anybody
yeah.
that can shoot us testimonials to get on the website, and that really helps. That third party connection really helps many people, rather than Aaron and I promoting it. So thank you, everyone.
And I'll throw this out there: if anybody wants to do a video testimonial, and maybe wants to put it up on our site eventually, we might be game for that. So just consider that, if somebody's brave enough to do that. We would greatly appreciate it, because I do feel like that face to face and that authenticity of somebody feeling that and seeing that would go a long way. So I appreciate everybody here. Again, like our Facebook or join our Facebook community, and we will alert you when our new website is up, and you guys can check it out.
Wonderful. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Aaron, and gratitude to the divine for providing this opportunity to be of service, and all of you beautiful people that were involved. We just really appreciate you.
All right, thank you all. I'm going to put up some bubbles until we go off air.